once my cousin mentioned to me, she said, I was watching the episode on scapegoats and I cannot relate at all, not one tiny bit. It was at the beginning of my YouTube channel, so I didn't have enough feedback. So I thought, oh, okay, well, you don't get it. But since then, I have found that people are in two very distinct categories. One category is that they simply cannot relate at all to scapegoat abuse. Another category can relate 100%. Most of them tell me their stories, and all our stories are so similar. Yes, there are varying degrees of abuse, varying degrees of severity, but our stories are all the same. So that is why I want to give more support to scapegoats, and also, if you share my videos, to maybe make more people understand what scapegoating is and how very dangerous and damaging it can be. So I need to interrupt myself here and let you in on something really, really important, something that happened to me. Now, I've been to maybe 20 therapists. I was just frantically looking for help everywhere, and none of them actually understood narcissism, especially covert narcissism. None of them understood scapegoating. And I was left even worse off than before. There were two who were mean on top of being ignorant. They showed no compassion. They showed no desire to understand something that they obviously didn't understand. One of them actually told me that they had patients who were far worse off than me. And at that point, I was still in this very vulnerable position. I was still living under the veil. I wasn't aware of anything. I just needed help. So when she said that, I immediately shrank back to when I was, 5 or 6 years old, when I was constantly told that I was mad, I was crazy, I was making things up, and I was making a mountain out of a molehill, and that, I was just mentally ill. So I didn't even reply to her because I was so taken aback. And believe it or not, I still signed up. So this is how dangerous it can be when we are vulnerable. I mean, this kind of thing can happen to anyone. Okay? And the second one, believe it or not, the second one is a Harley Street doctor with loads of awards, and told me something similar, that she's got patients that are far worse off than I was. And one day I sent her I sent her a very short story from my journal because I thought it was loaded. I thought, wow, this is a gold mine of information, and I wanted her opinion of it. She texted back and with pictures of her in a Balinese resort, and she said, "I'm doing a workshop in Bali now. I don't have time for your little story." I felt hurt, but at that point, I still doubted myself. I thought, if everyone keeps on saying that there's nothing wrong and that I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, then I must be making a mountain out of a molehill. So again, I went back to the time when I was a child, when I was constantly hearing those words. So this can happen to any of us. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are. When you're in a vulnerable position, we just get transported back in time, because this is how long-lasting trauma can be. So what I want you to know is, please, I've included the links to 2 videos that I've done on crappy therapists, scam artists, and how to assess a therapist. Okay, so do watch those videos. The links are below. So this time I want to do justice to one of our family scapegoats. We've had quite a few in the family. One took his own life when he was in his 20s. The other scapegoat died at a relatively young age. He wasn't terribly unhealthy, but he died from multiple organ failure, and the doctor couldn't tell what was wrong with him. He just deteriorated. And at that point, I didn't know anything about scapegoating. I just noticed that he was constantly being bullied, he was constantly being belittled, and he was constantly absorbing everyone's toxicity. Even the way he made tea was wrong, and people would laugh at him. He bore the brunt of everyone's jokes. He bore it with kindness. He bore it with generosity, and he never once complained. He never once answered back. So when he died, now this is something that I will never ever forget. It's just, the visual of it is just so horrific that I just can't forget it. You know, when he died, his coffin was too small. His legs were bent because the coffin was too small. Now, he wasn't a tall guy. He was of average height. But if the shop didn't have one that fitted him, they could have ordered from another shop. And if the whole country didn't have a coffin that would fit him, surely in this day and age, they could have just ordered one from China and it'll be delivered within 48 hours. It's just a question of money, isn't it? It's just about money. So here's the thing. He was single. He didn't spend much. He wore the same t-shirt every day, the same old shorts, and he ate very simply. And his car was like 30 years old. I mean, literally 30 years old. So all the money that he left behind could have bought him like the most beautiful, glamorous coffin ever. Not that the dead would mind. You know, you could say that, you know, he's dead. He doesn't give a shit what kind of coffin, whether it's silk lined or whether it's, you know, what it's made of. But for something that didn't fit and they had to bend his knees is something I find beyond repulsive. But it was at the time when I was still confused and I wasn't sure what scapegoating was all about. I was still in that stage where sometimes you just cannot believe that your family could be like that. There are no murders, there are no obvious physical abuse, but all the bruises and broken parts are invisible. Broken spirits and broken hearts, and they're all invisible. And it's not any less than physical abuse. Nobody batted an eyelid. And of course, I didn't say anything, because if nobody says anything, then it can't be that bad, right? So I thought, oh, okay, maybe it's not that bad. I can't believe I felt that way. Not that I felt that way, but I can't believe that was the explanation I offered myself. I didn't feel good about it. Something felt really, really terrible. And that is why that vision of him with bent knees in his coffin is just so horrific. He was always kind to everyone. He took their crap. He took everything from them that was toxic. He relieved them of so many of their crap and things that they didn't like about themselves, things that they just wanted to wash their hands off and dump everything onto him. You see, my regret is that I didn't know. I guess the difference is that you have a chance to know. We have a chance to know what we didn't know. And we have a chance to do things that we didn't do before because we were unaware. It feels like I learned too late. But then, on the other hand, you can't judge these things because we have our own individual, unique journey to go through. And maybe it took several deaths for me to realize this kind of toxic dysfunction. A lot of people talk about dysfunctional families, and that word has become so popular. Banning a teenager from going out too late at night is not dysfunctional. There are lots of things that are not dysfunctional that people call dysfunctional. Dysfunctional is when a scapegoat or any victim of emotional abuse, physical emotional abuse, is allowed to continue, where everyone turns a blind eye, where everyone conveniently points their finger at the actual victim. I said in another video that when we don't know why, when we don't have the answers, because hey, we're decent people, we have integrity, and our priority is to advance our soul. Our priority is to become the best version of ourselves, is to do the inner work so that we are truly happy and proud of our evolution. We don't understand so many things that others do. So what I said in that video is that if you don't understand something, if you don't have the answers to something, there is one answer that is a one size fits all, and that is follow the money. So it's become obvious that all the millions that he left, they didn't even want to use a little bit more to buy a coffin that's big enough for him, because they wanted more of his money. I know it sounds terrible, doesn't it? To us, it sounds terrible. But to them, it's just, why spend his money when we can have it all? I don't know. Am I being a mean bitch or something? Am I being pessimistic and mean-spirited to assume that? I don't see any other reason why they couldn't have bought him a bigger one. I just don't see it. I just hope that these people have enough self-awareness and enough remorse to really reflect on all this, reflect on what they've done, reflect on all the flying monkey business that they've been doing, reflect on how they have enabled the narcissists, how everyone has enabled everyone just to keep the scapegoat in their place, just to keep the scapegoat as the only ones who are being tortured and punished, as the trash can of the family. Even when the trash can of the family has died, they still can't even give him that little bit of respect. So I hope that you scapegoats out there, I hope that in your healing journey, that you will find some comfort in my videos. I am here to voice out what scapegoats are either not able to voice out, or they're dead. And if you're badly scapegoated, I would hope that you'd go to a psychologist or a therapist, and I hope that you get the understanding that you need. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm not trying to use negativity to exaggerate anything. I am just speaking the truth of what happens to scapegoats. And I am one of the more fortunate ones to have cottoned on to this sickness. I have escaped it. And my contribution is to voice out what they couldn't voice out.